Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to Indonesia Educator Conference Temu Pendidik Nusantara 2023, an annual conference that brings educator reflection, sharing good practices, building competence, collaboration, and also careers. This year, we are coming back with our wonderful theme, Growth Sustainably, Educational Change Beyond the Classroom. Thank you for joining us in this international class to have tons of new insight of education from the global perspective. Thank you all for finding time and visiting today's session. And first thing first, please let me introduce myself. My name is Ari Yulistiana as the moderator, and we also have Miss Eki and also Miss Anita as the ID support, and we will accompany you to discuss for the next 60 minutes. And we would like to express our gratitude to our partners, Yayasan Guru Belajar, Cerita Guru Belajar, Kampus Guru Cikal, Kampus Pemimpin Merdeka, Teach First Indonesia, and Komunitas Guru Belajar Nusantara. And our sponsors, PT Nutrifood Indonesia, Keluarga Kita, Provisi, Indo Relawan, PT Paragon Technology and Innovation, PT Marawai Coast, and Career.mu. And we also in collaboration with Komunitas Guru Belajar Nusantara, Jaringan Sekolah Madrasah Belajar, Komunitas Pengawas Belajar Nusantara, Persatuan Guru Nahdlatul Ulama, Ikatan Guru Indonesia, Pusat Studi Pendidikan dan Kebijakan, Asosiasi Kepala Sekolah Indonesia, Asosiasi Pengawas Sekolah Indonesia, Federasi Guru Independen Indonesia, Persatuan Guru Seluruh Indonesia, Sekolah Literasi Indonesia, and Bantu Guru Belajar Lagi. Thank you to our partners and sponsor who made this moment possible and make us believe that we are not alone in the way of education to our kids. And dear participant, we invite you all to also join us in Puncak Temu Pendidik Nusantara in October 21st, 2023 at Basketball Hall Senayan, Gelora Bung Karno, Jakarta, Indonesia. So before we go into the speakers, we would like to remind you all to write down the questions in the chat box in YouTube, and during the session, please also screenshot or quote existing part of the session and post them on the social media with the hashtag belajar di TPN 10, belajar di TPN X, and mention at Tamu Pendidik Nusantara, at Teach First Indonesia, at Swiling Leong, and at Brianon McLaughlin, as you can see on the screen. And we are so lucky this evening because we have two great speakers from the different countries with the interesting topics. And let's welcome to our speakers. Our first speaker will be Dr. Long Swiling. Hello, Dr. Long.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Ibu Swiling, we can also call you Ibu Swiling.
Yes, please do that.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome to this session. And how are you today?
Oh, great, great, great. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
looking forward to it. I'm very excited to meet, although it's not physically, but at least to be able to know that, I'm part of this wonderful conference that can reach out to educators in all over the world.
okay. Thank you very much, Ibu Swiling. It's very nice to have you here. And your topic today will be principal pre-assessment strategies and instructional strategies of differentiated instruction. And let's welcome our next speaker, Miss Brianon. Hello, Miss Brianon. Uh,
Hello, good evening.
Hello. Good evening. Selamat malam, Ibu Bri.
Selamat malam.
Okay. We are very happy to have you this evening in this session.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's wonderful to be back again at this beautiful conference with such an amazing community.
Okay, this will be very nice today. And you have the title of presentation, Career Development for Students.
Yes.
Okay, can't wait to listen the presentation. Okay, the next session is the parts of the presentation. We will start the presentation. We will turn the time over to Ibu Swiling for 20 minutes and then to Ibu Bri for the next 20 minutes. And I will tell about the brief introduction about Ibu Swiling. Dr. Long Swiling is a secondary mathematics master teacher with the Academy of Singapore Teachers. He completed a master degrees in special education in 2008 and PhD in 2015. And she runs the interdisciplinary mathematics networking learning community involving teachers from different schools. Very interesting. And Ibu Brianon is the Director of Community and Internal Communication at Teach for Australia. Yes. Ibu Bri is a former high school English language teacher and school leader. And Ibu Bri is also passionate about harnessing the people power of communities and developing leaders to address weak system problem affecting students. And Ibu Bri was lived in Yogyakarta, studied at University of Gajah Mada, and now lives in Sydney, Australia, right near the beach. Very nice, Ibu Bri. Okay. And now the time will be to Ibu Swiling, and the stage is yours. Please take your time, Ibu Bri. Yeah, I mean Ibu Swiling.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I just want to check. Y'all can hear me well, correct? Yes.
Okay, we
Thank you.
can hear
Yeah.
you.
So I'm waiting for the slides to come on. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, great. Yeah, I can see it. Okay. My name is Sui Ling. Okay. I have been conducting workshops on differentiated instruction for a while. So very briefly for today, my objectives are very short. Okay. I do hope that you can understand a little bit about the principles of differentiated instruction and be able to have some ideas on how to assess your students' learning needs and then select or design tasks that and select strategies that would differentiate for your learners. Okay, so I want to just say upfront that I'm one of those teachers who love to over prepare. So in my stacks of slides, I have already prepared quite a fair bit, but within this short 20 minutes, I will not be able to do justice to all the slides, but I would like to just highlight some areas which I think will be very important for you to take note of. Okay, so this is the QR code that you can take a picture of it. You can access the deck of slides, okay, in the Google folder. But if you have any issues, you can always highlight to us later on. Okay, so I will move on. If you really need to, I can always come back to this QR code. Yeah. Okay, so let me start with the why differentiated instruction. As you can see in this picture, okay, if we provide equally to all our students, in fact, we will not be able to reach out to them because our students are all very different and unique, and they come in all different sizes and they have different learning needs. Okay, so even if we provide differently, it's already definitely better than just thinking that we can teach to the average, okay? But actually, the more important idea is to what you call removing the barriers for our students. But in order to remove the barriers for our students, actually the crux of the matter is to really to know our students. And unfortunately, I will not be able to go into detail of all that because, yeah, if you really want to go through differentiated instructions on even a short courses, it can take many, many, many more hours. So for today, I really hope to inspire you to be able to have to find out, to really spur yourself to find out more about DI in short. Okay, and really I want you to bear in mind that differentiated instruction, DI in short, is not a teaching strategy. So if you think of it only as a teaching strategy, then you will not be able to really design learning experiences that could meet the needs of your student. So think of it as an educational approach that are based on principles. And if you have read any of Carol Ann Tomlinson's books, you may realize that most of us are very familiar with just 5 principles. These 6 principles that you can see on the slides are 6 principles that the Academy of Singapore teachers on our own have sort of repackaged it a little bit, okay, based on the 5 principles by Carol Ann Tomlinson. Okay, and so for today, as I said, I would not be able to go in depth to all the different principles. So I would only want to highlight the pre and ongoing assessment. Of course, that cannot be on its own, and is always linked to very clear learning goals that we have set for our student. And the strategies or the tasks that we design for our students need to be of appropriate degree of challenge, okay, and that will meet the learning needs. So I will not be able to go in depth on respectful tasks, but I will still do a little bit of it. Flexible grouping, I will only just mention. Building a community, although is a very, very important principle to bear in mind, because we need to realize that in the classroom, we are together learning with our students. So we should not be only thinking that we are sitting on the altar, looking at our students and telling them what they need to learn. We need to be really, really humble and learn together with our students. It is only in that way that we are able to reach out to all. So as mentioned, okay, I would like to focus a bit more on assessment, because the very fact that if we want to know our students, we need to know where our student is. Okay, what do they know or what do they not know? And then we are able to tell them that these are our learning goals, and I want you to be able to reach that goal. And this is how I'm going to go about to help you to reach that goal. Okay, so many of you are teachers, so you're very familiar with things like pre-assessment, formative assessment. Formative assessment being assessment for learning. Summative assessment is assessment of learning. So the next few slides, I will only highlight a few strategies that are commonly used that are classified as formal, informal, or ongoing. Okay, as I mentioned, although I would like to dwell on assessment, there are many ways to assess our students. Okay, so informally, we can talk to them, we can observe them, we can watch them. So being very able to notice our students and the dynamics among the students, and even the dynamics the students have with us or with their parents, will help us to understand our students well. And then even if we are not able, or if apart from the informal assessment, we can also have a bit more formal assessment using things like Freyr's diagram, okay, or making notes on our students, getting our students to write journal or show and tell us what they know or they don't know, or get the students to do some reading or use quizzes and so on. So at the end of the day, okay, whether we use direct or indirect or the different strategies that I mentioned here, bear in mind that assessment is always ongoing, whether it is we do it before we teach our students, or we do it during the time when we teach our students, or at the end of our teaching. Okay, so assessment is really critical, because only when we know what our students know or don't know and give the appropriate feedback will they be able to move forward. Okay, so coming to this important principle, okay, of teaching up, which means that we want our students we want to believe that all our students can learn, and that we want to select tasks that are just nice for them. So in simple term, it is called the Goldilocks principle. And it is actually very much in line with Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Because if our students find the work that we provide for them or we give to them too easy, they'll get bored easily. But if they find the work too challenging, they will give up. Okay, so when teachers select tasks and design the learning experiences, we need to be sure that it is just nice. But because our students are all different, so we cannot just think of one size fit all, and we cannot just give the same problem to all the students. So we need to think of what kind of tasks that can be what you call tiered. Later on, I will elaborate on that, so that students will find that they're able to reach out and do the very problems or tasks that we assign to them. As I said, I will need to skip the rest because if not, we won't have time. Okay, so this table, if many of you have read about Carol Ann Tomlinson's books on differentiated instruction, you'll be very familiar with this summary table. Okay, because differentiation to her is a teacher's proactive response to learners' needs, shaped by mindset and guided by non-negotiable of differentiation, such as the principles stated. But if you read her books, she would have changed some of the phrasing of the principles. And her phrasing here are also a bit different from mine. But whether they are similar or very different sounding, but they are the same base idea. Because we want to provide an environment that is encouraging to our students. We want to give them a quality curriculum, and we want to respect them, and we want to assess them, and we also want to manage them well. So teachers can differentiate content, process, product, and effect or environment, and according to students' readiness, interest, and learning profile. So what teacher can do is to select strategies to be able to differentiate according to that. So as you can see, there are so many different components in differentiated instruction, which at this present time, I really will not be able to go in depth. Okay, but I would like to mention to you and highlight to you so that at least you have a good sense of what DI is all about. So when you want to differentiate content, you are asking yourself, what do you want your students to know? Okay, and when you want to differentiate the process, you must ask yourself, how do my students learn this concept or these ideas? Okay, the process that you use. And of course, to differentiate product is how can students demonstrate what they have learned through the different ways to let us know whether they have learned it well or not. And of course, the environment can refer to the many different spaces that we provide for our students, be it indoor, outdoor, online, offline. So there are many ways to change and vary. Okay, so as a good teacher, we need to be able to assess our student, know where they are now, where we want them to go, and how do we get them there. Okay, now, so the next few slides actually shows a number of strategies for assessment, okay, which I have used as well as many of my teachers that I've shared with have used. And as I said, I won't be able to elaborate in detail, but I would like to present to you, okay, all these strategies so that you can go back and check it out, read a lot more, and also to try them out on your own. Okay, so 2 stars and the wish are usually used by English teachers or even yourself to let your students know how well they do and what else they need to improve. Plus, minus, and what next is also similar to 2 star and a wish. The only difference is that you, especially for languages, means you are asking the students to know what is their strength, what is their weaknesses, and how to improve. Okay, so this can also be used for humanities subject in terms of what they write for a particular topic. Warm and cool feedback is something I really like, but as I said, I really cannot go in depth to it. Okay, but bear in mind when you're giving feedback to the students, bear in mind that you are giving feedback on their work. So we have to be very sensitive to our students' this emotion, okay? And we need to be really, really careful that we are giving them comments on their work and not on their person, so that they will be able to accept the feedback that you provide for them and to really improve on their work. Okay, many of you may be familiar with traffic lights. It's a very simple strategy. If you can either use color sticks or you can use cards to let the students know. Red means that they have difficulty. If you For me, I've seen teachers use the card, red and green card alone on their table. So if the students turn to red, means they have difficulty, and you can go to them and help and support them. Then if they turn the card to green, that means they're good to go and they can be left on their own to study. Okay, so personally, I love the Freya diagram a lot. Okay, as I can see, the time is moving very fast. I'll probably not be able to elaborate very much, except to say that Freya diagram can be used in the beginning as an introduction to the lesson, where you can talk about the definition of the concept. And Freya diagram can be used in any subject, every single subject, be it English to learn vocabulary, be it mathematics to learn math concept, be it sciences or geography, history, any subject, okay? Art also. Because you are all talking about a certain idea, okay? So you have the word that you want them to learn in the middle, then you talk about the definition of the idea, the characteristics of the idea, as well as examples and non-examples. So if you use Freya diagram, you just give the template to the students, and you can go through each of the component with them. So you can use it in the beginning of the lesson, or you can use it throughout the lesson, or you can use it as a summary, as an exit card as well. Okay, so Freya diagram is very, very versatile. Okay, I won't mention about 321 exit card or entrance card. I think you can read it on your own. Okay, so now let me move on to other strategies. Okay, whiteboarding is one of my all-time favorite. And I've shared this with many teachers in Indonesia, both in Bandung and in Sumba Island. Okay, and they really love it. So actually, it would be really nice if I have whiteboards that I can share with you, but I can't. So please read it on your own, okay, so that you can try it out on your own. And it's very versatile. You can, of course, think of electronic whiteboard as well. Okay, the reason why I do not want to spend time on that is because I really want to spend a bit more time on the last strategy, the idea of tiered assignment, okay? So RAFT is very good for writing, okay? It's for role, for a moment I slipped my mind, audience, format, and topic, okay? So this is to give the students a choice as to what they want to write, okay? Of course, there is no need for you to give so many differences, okay? So for teachers, if you think that giving so many is too troublesome, you can actually reduce the number and just give 2 roles for the students to choose from. But they will be very clear as to what role they play, who are the audience that they write to, as well as the format that they want to write in, and the topic as well. So this is particularly good for creative writing. And of course, another strategies that y'all can consider using is either concept map or mind map. And you can try out this free web called Coggle. Actually, there are many available online, but using a mind map or a concept map is very good for students to be able to link the ideas that you want to teach them. I've used it recently when I teach algebraic factorization of algebraic expressions to my students. And I think it helps them to pull all the ideas together. Okay, so as I said, I want to focus a little bit more on tiering, because tiering is something that is highly doable for many of us, okay? And tiering is based on what we call readiness, how ready our students are, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, we have to make sure that the problems or the task that we give to them is just nice. So because our students are very different, we are not able to just give them one task and expect our students to be able to do it. So if we want to tier that one task, okay, we will need to think of how to adjust the task in such a way that they are able to be differentiated. Okay, I have also provided the reading for you from Carol Ann Tomlinson in the same Google folder. So please do read more on how to use the equalizer. Okay, and I've also given examples as well. This is for a science topic. Okay, now, so do not be overwhelmed that, wow, I need to prepare 3 different tasks for my students. I can tell you for my mathematics, my tiered instruction is just 3 different problems. One easy, I didn't show it here, but if you are interested, you can always email me. Okay, I just gave 3 problems, one easy, one intermediate, and one difficult problem. And I let my student choose. Yeah. So that means the students are only doing just one problem and they don't feel bad. And of course, if they can do the simple problem, they can move on to the harder problem as well. Okay. And like I said, tiered problem can also be, or tiered assignment can also be used in the form of a tic-tac-toe. Okay. And I personally love it. My students love it. You can play tic-tac-toe as a game. You can get them to do it by themselves or play in a pair. As a game, they can play against each other. And I've even done tic-tac-toe as a whole class. I played against the whole class. And the students were really crazy about it. So when they solve a problem, they draw a cross. Then when I solve it, I draw a circle. Okay. But the best and more exciting one is when you can divide the class into 2 groups and they play against each other. It can be very, very fun. And of course, there's another one that I really love. That is the menu and cubing. Okay. Let me see how much time I have. I can rattle on and on and on. But if you are able to read out more, okay, as I said, the menu need not be very complex as well. The example that I give you here may have like many, many different types for you to choose from. But if you want to start simple, you can only select 2 items and let the children choose just any of the 2 items. I have done it for what we call the low progress learner in my school, using a very simple menu. And they all love it because they get to choose, like for example, they can choose the starter, they can choose the main course, which are all just problems or tasks that you want them to do. So it need not be very complicated, okay? And of course, cubing is something I love doing as well. And you can make your own cube because the cube have only 6 faces. So there are only 6 problems or 6 ideas that you want them to look at, okay? And you can also buy cubings that have plastic pockets, like the one that you see on the right. And what I did is I will just type the question on a paper and insert into the plastic folder. And then I can change and I have different cubes, okay? Yeah. So it's really, really simple, doable, okay? Yeah. So all the strategies that I've shared with you for tonight are all strategies that many teachers in Singapore have tried. And these are highly doable ones. Okay. Yeah. You can do it for English, you can do it for math, you can do it for science and any subjects as well. And of course, I personally like learning centers a lot. The unfortunate thing that learning centers is like a little bit what you call, you need a lot more preparation, okay? But you can do a simple one that is called a center rotation, where it's just 3 simple station. One can be online, one is teacher set, and one is offline. So you get groups of students to rotate and round and do different tasks, okay? Yeah, I think, by the way, all these strategies that I've shared can be used for primary students, secondary, middle school, high school. Yes, all of them can be, okay? Yeah. I have provided one resource for you to look at and some of my references. Okay, and I've come to the end of my sharing. I'm so sorry that I have to speed up and speak too fast. I hope that I have showed you why we need to differentiate, how we can do it, and what is differentiated instruction all about. Okay, yeah, with that, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Swiling. Applause for Ibu Swiling. What an amazing presentation. And it's really give us new insights about differentiated learning. And I highlight the point, critique the work, not the person, and about the cool and warm responses. Previously, I can differentiate between the cool and warm one, but then I know after your presentation. And actually, we have many questions and many responses, but the next we will listen first for the presentation from Ibu Bri. Hello, Ibu Bri.
Hello,
Are
wasn't
you
that
ready for the
wonderful?
presentation?
Oh, I'm
Yeah, it's really
feeling
wonderful.
very inspired by Ibu Ling and so many wonderful strategies for everybody. It made me think that you're walking away with your toolkit so full of different tools to
Mhm.
use and experiment with. That was great.
Yeah, it's really mind blowing for me. And the 20 minutes, the next 20 minutes is for you, Ibu Bri, and the time is yours. And please take over the stage.
Makasih. Okay, and we'll just take a moment to get the slides ready. Here we go. Saya senang sekali bertemu dengan semuanya. I'm so very grateful for your time, and I hope that during the next 20 minutes we can talk about career development for students. It's something I'm really passionate about. I spent 6 years teaching in schools, in mostly high schools in Australia and in America, and I've learned a lot that's made me think about Teach for Australia's mission, and that's the organisation I work with now. We are friends and allies with Teach First Indonesia, and I'm so grateful for their invitation that brought me here tonight. And at Teach for Australia, we have a vision that I think you'll all feel similarly inspired by. Obviously, our vision is Australia specific, but I think it's relevant to everybody. We have a vision of an Australia where education gives every child greater choice for their future. And if we pause and think about that for a moment, the question is, how does career development not become an essential part of what we do in schools? But as you know, sometimes the reality is that young people leave school feeling unprepared to navigate their way into the workforce and make informed career decisions and understand how careers work. We also know that sometimes parents are really feeling concerned that their children don't have what they need to be able to make that transition successfully. And of course, as teachers yourselves, I'm sure you have so many ideas about what we could do and a real desire to innovate. But often, what we hear in Australia is that because teachers have a very busy workload and many priorities to balance, sometimes they have to deprioritize things like career development or career learning because there's so much else in the curriculum, literacy and numeracy and geography and so many wonderful things that oftentimes are linked to testing. And so, because testing can sometimes drive our behaviour in Australia and indeed around the world, I've learned, I think that something like careers, which can be a little bit flaky, a little bit nebulous, or a little bit mysterious, sometimes they get left to the side. But I'm here to say that I think that in order for a Teach for Australia to achieve this vision for education, a vision that I'm sure you would all feel is a relevant one to Indonesia as well, we're going to have to think more about how we integrate careers into the classroom. And that's what we'll talk about in the next little while. I think that I've underlined greater choice there. That's me doing the underlining, not Teach for Australia. And the reason I've underlined that is because of a key issue about access. Some young people who are growing up in circumstances where they don't have access to information, access to opportunities, maybe access to role models who are living out different careers, that lack of access can then mean that their aspirations are limited. When they dream about the career that they'd like for themselves, they are informed mostly by what they're familiar with. You may have heard the expression, you can only be what you can see. Now, I don't think that is always the case, but I do think for young people who are growing up, perhaps in lower socioeconomic situations, it's likely that they haven't seen as many different types of career possibilities for them in their own life based on what they've seen around them. So that's a limitation that myself and the people that I work with believe we can absolutely overcome. And I'm going to share a few strategies with you that we've found to be effective when we're talking about students in Australia. So here are the steps that I think are necessary to support student careers. We're going to walk through them together. And the first one is critical. What do you mean when you say career development? I wonder if you mean the same thing as me or not. And critically, I wonder if your students mean the same thing in their head when they're thinking about careers as you do when you're trying to teach them about careers. Sometimes words like this can take on lots of different meanings. We think about jobs, work, careers. What's the difference? What's the similarity? And so in order to lead students onto greater learning and discovery for themselves, language is going to be so important. And so that's where we'll start. When we think about what is career development, I suggest to you that sometimes students arrive in school with a fairly simplistic idea about what their career might look like. As you can see here with my fun little diagram, they get their first real job, they think, and that's the starting point, that red dot at the bottom of the line. And then off they go on their career. They take off up on the line, and someday, after they've worked really hard, they'll reach that star. They'll achieve what it is that they think they're meant to achieve. They'll make it happen. They'll get to the end. They'll have done their career and it's over. And it will be a straight line from that first job experience, nice and easy, to where they're wanting to get to. And I think you'll all agree that is so rarely what it looks like. This is a much more accurate depiction of what happens. You get your first job and you start at the red dot, and then things happen. You go up and down and left and right. You can see that perhaps you work really hard, but then you feel like a bit of an imposter and you feel insecure and you're not sure. And maybe you ask for some help and get some good advice and go a little bit sideways into a job you didn't expect. And maybe you get promoted and you move up and you go sideways again. And that is a far more common career trajectory for most of us. But for a student, if we showed them that squiggle, that's intimidating and we don't have good enough language to talk about it. And so I'm going to share with you a framework that we use at Teach for Australia to talk about what this puzzle of up and down can really mean in nice concrete language. And here it is. We suggest that you get your first real job and then one of these four things happen. And then these four things will continue to happen throughout your entire career. And where you go will be one of these four things, and it will determine which direction changes. So let me explain them. The first one is pretty clear, I think. Climbing the ladder. That's a very common expression in English, and that refers to when you have a job and you're offered a promotion or an opportunity to move up in the organization that you're working for, perhaps in a school, that might look like taking on an additional position of responsibility, becoming a head of department, or doing something more senior with more responsibility, moving up, often usually getting more money as well, which we all appreciate. And we appreciate the ego. It makes us feel good to move up the ladder, like we are going up that line that we originally looked at. But that's not always what happens. In fact, depending on what organization you're in, sometimes you get up the ladder and there's nowhere else to climb. There aren't any more rungs to go up. And so that's when we move over to the idea of lattice, which refers to the crisscross pattern of different materials. Often you see that on fences or on screens. And so that lattice refers to the diagonals. Maybe you move sideways into a job that you didn't quite expect, but is relevant to your industry or profession. Maybe you take on an additional subject in school or change year levels that you're teaching. And so you're moving diagonally and sideways, not necessarily becoming more of a boss, but certainly acquiring new skills and diversifying your toolkit. Another way your career might develop is by acquiring positions of leadership that don't necessarily mean getting a promotion, but certainly mean taking charge. So maybe you would join a committee or become an organizer for an event. Maybe you could collaborate with some team members and be the leader of the project. That's you taking on additional responsibility and really growing your skills, even if it's not a formal promotion or position change. And finally, as I think we all know sometimes, one job leads on to the next. And so your career development as you leave an organisation is that it forms a launch pad to where you're headed next. And that's okay too. In fact, the research in Australia suggests that over time, young people will have more and more jobs at more and more organisations compared to previous generations where someone might have started at one company and worked there for their entire life. That's not likely anymore. There are more launch pads along the way. And those launch pads are the things that are likely to push us through. Oh, I've not been moving those slides. I apologize. So this is the straight line up to the star. Nice and clear. Thank you, Informatica SD. I see you telling me I wasn't moving them. So this is what I'm saying. You start at the bottom and move up a straight line. This is what students come to school thinking is what it's going to be. That's not likely. It's more common that it's a squiggly line. A bit messy and overwhelming for a student to see, but far more common that this will be the journey we go on. And that's where we want language that can help us describe this journey to students, that can help explain it. And that's where Teach for Australia finds this language, the 4 L's that we call them, climbing the ladder, moving along the lattice, maybe taking on some leadership roles, and certainly looking for the right time to take that launch pad to the next job. And so my suggestion to you is, in order to support students, what language could you use to describe what career development means so that they're getting that definition consistently over time to help them feel more confident and to maybe make it less simplistic and more realistic based on the jobs that all of us have had. So here's a moment for crowd participation. In the chat, could you please type in when you were at your last job or maybe the job you're in, which of these experiences did you have in terms of your career development? Have you had a ladder moment where you got a promotion? Have you had a lattice moment where you moved and did something slightly different with your role? Have you had a leadership moment where maybe you were asked to do something extra and it was a good chance to grow? Or have you recently had a launch pad and you've moved to a different organisation? I'm going to wait for a moment while you write into the chat which of those 4 of you had recently. I can see some great comments and questions in here. Maybe a bit shy on sharing which of the ladder or lattice or leadership or launch pads you've had. But I strongly recommend you think about this and how it might apply to your own career, because sometimes trying it on for size is a great way to think about how this would be relevant to our students. So once you've defined career development, I think the real question is, what framework could you use in your classroom to really structure the career development you want to do? In Australia, oftentimes people have what we call work experience, where you might go and visit a business, a company, an organisation, and you will sit with somebody and shadow them, see how they do their job, and think about whether or not that might be a job you would like to do. And that's how many young people discover what might be some of their areas of interests. We also do aptitude tests or talent tests to discover what might be a student's strength and think about which career pathway might be most applicable to them. However, sometimes those strategies are not sufficient because they happen once and then a student forgets about them. You might remember being a teenager yourself and moving quickly through life, and you forget what happens year on year. So what we're thinking about with a framework is something that you can use regularly and revisit often. And that's why we've got written on this slide that repetition is critical, because that's the part where we want to be coming back to it and revisiting it so that it sticks in their minds and becomes their way of thinking about their career. I'm going to share a particular framework with you now that might be relevant or interesting to you. It's certainly not the only framework and it might not be the best framework, but it's an example to demonstrate this idea. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. But before I do, I want to be clear about something you'll see on the next slide that I don't know how transferable it is to Indonesia, so I'll explain it a little bit. It's what we call enterprise skills or perusahaan skills, company skills. You may have come across something called 21st century skills or soft skills, people skills. This is all language referring to the same thing, and it's been proven to have a very positive impact on how students are able to navigate their career. But we aren't always explicit enough about what this looks like. And even though we can't agree on what it's called, there is overwhelming evidence that it matters. And what we want is for students not just to survive their career, but to really thrive in a rapidly changing world. So the key thing that makes these enterprise skills valuable is that they will go with students even as jobs keep changing. So here on the slide, we can see a framework from an organisation in Australia called the Prince's Trust Australia. They have fantastic resources that you can go and have a look at, and you can see their logo in the corner there. And here are some examples of enterprise skills that are the kind of things we think students need to develop to be successful in any career. But we need to teach them the language, name it, and help them to grow those skills, no matter what they choose to do. And as you can see there, it explains that these are transferable between jobs and between different pathways, and they're really the cheat codes. If you develop good critical thinking and you develop really strong sense of innovation, you are going to be a more valuable employee and have more success in your career. So a framework like this is something that you could have on the wall in your classroom and refer to often, drawing it into your lessons, drawing it into your conversations and counselling with students to help them be thinking about their career, even if it's not a careers day or a career lesson. I think every lesson is a career lesson because you are always developing your skills. Have a moment to think about which of these might you call your own superpower. Which of these enterprise skills are you really, really good at? And which of them might you want to continue developing in? That kind of self-reflection question can be very valuable for students at any age. And what I love about this particular framework and the reason I chose it to share with you is because you can really use it to develop mindsets and develop the skills and capabilities that young people need and will need after they finish school. You can also adapt it to different environments. And it's flexible enough that I think if you have the kind of influence in your school that you need, you might be able to take students class by class, year by year as they grow and have the same framework, which means throughout their entire school career, they might continue to see the same language and understand its importance for them. Again, as I mentioned before, something that you see once, you might forget. But if you see it always, that repetition is critical. And it's going to mean that young people start to internalize how important some of this language is, and critically, how important those skills are. I suspect that you are already doing things in your classroom every day that link to these kind of skills. But perhaps there's an opportunity to find a framework that you can choose and use that to hang your work off of so that students can carry it with them. This is just part one of the framework, and I'll show you part two in a moment. But there's one additional piece that I think is worth mentioning, and that's about the idea that sometimes a framework like this can help to address student disengagement and poor behaviour. Now, that's a big claim to make, and maybe it's not always true. However, in my experience as a teacher, I discovered that some students who were feeling disengaged from school because the academic work was really difficult, and even with wonderful differentiation strategies like Ibu Swiling shared with us, even with those strategies, they might be struggling with their outcomes in school. But even if that's true, they can still be developing these skills because they will still graduate from school and join the workforce one way or another. So even if they're not at the top of the class and they're not high achievers and they're not super, super sharp and clever, they still need these skills in order to be a successful employee and to have a strong career. And so giving them this language can make them feel good about themselves and make them feel capable and successful at some aspects of learning, even if their literacy or their numeracy is not perfect. And so, in that sense, a framework like this can be a wonderful tool. And it's a little bit different than the way that careers is sometimes talked about, where we say, choose a job. What do you want to be when you grow up? A doctor, a lawyer, a pilot? What do you want to be when you grow up? It's a good question. It's a good thinking question. But these skills make us think about more than just the what, it makes us think about the how. And my challenge to you is, which language could you choose? Which framework might you choose to give students that gift and help them think about the how? This is part 2 of the framework, and this gets us closer to choosing a particular job or a particular profession. However, instead of saying, oh, I want to become an engineer or I want to become a computer developer, it's asking us to think more broadly in these categories. Take a moment to scan them and think about which one would be your major that you say, yeah, that's who I am, and which one might be your backup. The reason that these categories are more effective than naming specific jobs is because in this era, we are moving so quickly with technology, the world is changing every day, and we don't know what jobs there will be. So, good careers development that empowers students is going to give them an idea of different categories that might be relevant, that then they can grow into particular jobs. It can help them identify their strengths and superpowers without being limited by time and the day that we live in. So, I suggest to you that choosing a framework, whichever one might make sense for you, can be a real big gift to students and help them to navigate an uncertain future with more confidence about who they are and where they might be successful in the world. And then, as I mentioned and have spoken about, I think you need to adjust your plans. Instead of having your lessons for specific subjects, you want to weave in the careers work into every day and every lesson, not loudly, but gently. Then I think we're looking for that opportunity to say, can we refer to the language explicitly so it's clearer and clearer to the students that it matters? And finally, how often can we revisit it and give them space to keep growing and changing as they continue to age, and give ourselves space to grow as we experiment with what I think is one of the most important parts of education? So my suggestion is perhaps our shared vision can be a world where education gives every student greater choice for their future. And I think that careers development might help us to get there. And maybe something I've shared tonight might have sparked a thought for you about what you might like to experiment with or what you might like to do differently in the next school year with your students. I'd love to hear all about it. Terima kasih banyak. Ibu Ari, back to you.
Terima kasih Ibu Bri. Thank you very much. Awesome. It's really give us a lot of enlightenment. And I think we should ask the committee to at our time or make the special workshop with Ibu Bri and Ibu Swilling, right? And now the time to Q&A session. So I will invite also Ibu Swilling here to the stage. Hello, Ibu Swilling. Please join with us here.
Hello, once
We will
again.
go ahead and take some time for question and answer. We have so many questions and positive responses from the participant. Okay, let's start with the first question.
So
It
should I
is
choose a question?
yeah. Please answer the question from our participant. What's the
Yeah, I
difference
see a lot
learning
of
from?
comments, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that, in the interest of time, I will address
Yeah.
one question which I think almost all the participants will feel the same way. I think the question is from, I can't pronounce her name, Ratno, Ritno?
Okay.
Yeah. How can
Okay.
educators effectively implement differentiated instruction strategies to meet the diverse learning needs of students in a mixed ability classroom? Yeah, I think this will be
Mm-hmm.
one question on everybody's mind. And that is also the reason why I mentioned that, because our students are all very different. So if we give the same task to everybody, they will have, some will find it too easy and some will find it too difficult. So if we are able to tier the task a little bit, be it in terms of level of difficulty, or be it in terms of like the task being more concrete, more pictorial, or more abstract, it's the same task, but it could be done in a different way, okay, or allow the student to do it in a different way. That would definitely meet the different learning needs of the students. So if the students are more kinesthetic type, they can do a more hands-on in terms of learning the activity, like an experiment. Whereas if they are more abstract, they can just watch a video and learn how to do the experiment without even touching anything. And based on the observations, they can write down, some observations and some ideas and some connections and all that. So if the class are very different, all the more you need to have what you call tasks that are easy, so that it will be good for everyone to be able to complete that. Then those that are intermediate will be what I call baseline. That means even they have finished the easy ones, they have to move on to the baseline. I mean, both move on to the intermediate. And then if they are more successful or they have completed it, then they can move on to the challenging, slightly more challenging one. So for students who are high ability, they don't have to start on the easy question. They can immediately start on the intermediate, then they do the advanced. Yeah. So in that way, everybody get a chance to start somewhere that they are ready and comfortable with, and they can experience what we call success. And if the tasks are not too difficult, all the students who are not ready will just give up. Okay, so you do need to have tiered instructions or tiered activity for students to be able, so that everybody can achieve something at the end of the day. So I hope that I've answered that question.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Suing and Miss Ratna Supriyanti. You are very lucky because have a direct answer from our expert to tonight. And now, due to the limit time, for Ibu Bri, would you like to answer a question from our participants? We
Yes,
have.
absolutely. We have
Mm-hmm,
a wonderful question from Madhan AI.
mm-hmm,
How can
okay,
schools and educators, yes, that one, perfect.
okay.
And so the question is, how can schools and educators play a more proactive role in supporting students' career development and helping them make informed choices about their future career paths? An excellent question, thank you. And I think what I was talking about in my presentation are two of those first steps that are so important. Firstly, empowering students with language to understand what is career development and what might be future career paths that they might choose from. And then choosing a framework that gives you some language that you can repeat again and again that will help bring careers into the classroom. Instead of thinking about careers as something that happens later or something that happens after school, we need to think about careers as something that we're growing every day, the skills that we need and the muscles that we will be using as workers in the workforce. And so, how the school can play a role and how you as an educator can play a role is to have this conversation as professionals together. Have you asked other teachers about career development in your school? What they're doing in their classroom? Maybe, as I mentioned, if you have influence and opportunity, you could decide a framework for the whole school and then every year be using the same language, be emphasizing the same skills that are not in the curriculum for tested learning and academic study, but are definitely skills that they need to learn while they're at school. And I think the question for me is always how do we bring parents into the mix as well? Because parents are going to be a part of their journey, the student's journey, that is, after they finish school. And so empowering parents with those skills as well can be very helpful to both help them have better conversations with students and also to expand parents' thinking. Because maybe the experience the parents had when they were at school was very different. And now they're working with students who are living in a world with lots of technological changes and a workforce where every year there are new jobs that we never heard of before. And so instead of thinking, what are the future career paths we can prepare them for? It's really about thinking, how can we prepare them for the unknown? And using some of that language can make it feel less scary and actually make it feel empowering and exciting that they are ready, because I really believe that the young people are the leaders of our future. And so we're trying to grow that student leadership and give them those skills so they can help all of us to live in a better world. Thanks for the question.
Wonderful, Ibu Bri. Thank you very much for your answer.
You're welcome.
And it's really quickly, I think, it's the time to end our webinar. Um, may I conclude with the brief statement that effective teaching is not about the giving of the same information to everyone. It's about tailoring your instruction to meet the needs of each individual learner. And student career development is not just about choosing a path, but about shaping their future. And I would like to thank everyone who made this meeting possible for join and participate and also giving attention. And big thank you for Ibu Swilling and Ibu Bri. For all of the participants, please share your reflection and your thoughts about this session on social media. Um, Please screenshot or quote existing part of the session and post them on your social media with the hashtag belajar di TPN 10 or TPN X and mention 3 other friends and also at Temu Pendidik Nusantara, at Teach Words Indonesia, at Swilling Leong, at Brianon McLaughlin. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time at Puncak Temu Pendidik Nusantara in October 21st, 2023. See you, everyone. Bye bye.